It's time for the Daily Stand Up Podcast presented by Agile Dad with your host, Lee Henson. Without any further ado, let's get started. I recently received an email from Mike Cohn. I love getting these. And this one was really interesting to me. It's called The 4 Reasons Your Team Might Be Resistant to Change. I can tell you right now, I have encountered those teams, the teams that they ask the questions like, "Can't we just keep things the same way they are now, but make them a little more agile?" Or can't we just sprinkle some Scrum dust on this and make things more Scrummy? Yes, someone actually said that. But let's talk about being resistant to change and what that means. So, it's easy to observe that people are resistant to organizational change. If you've worked in any organization for more than a brief period, you've seen resistance to change yourself. It's just one of those natural things. Perhaps you were told you'd have a new manager, or that the team would be using a new technology, or that your company was being acquired by a larger company. Maybe your team had grown in size and now it's being split into 2 teams, but you just can't bear the thought of it. These are all times where people become resistant to change. So let's start at the top. Reason number 1: lack of awareness about why the change is necessary. The most common reason people resist change is lack of awareness behind the reason for the change. If your team is being split into 2 teams, you're much more likely to support that change if you understand why it's happening. We need to let common sense prevail. The why behind the what has always been a challenge for organizations, and no pun intended, but I still haven't been able to figure out why. If you can be transparent and tell people why we're doing things and why we're pushing in a certain direction, it's going to help them have confidence in a decision, and it's going to help them really understand what we're trying to do moving forward. All right, let's go to number 2. Number 2 says lack of information about what. This is interesting. Another reason employees resist change is fear of the unknown. I might be willing to go skydiving one day. And he goes in quotes here and says, "My friends would tell you there's no way I'd ever do that." And I tend to agree. But for sake of argument, let's pretend that I'd agree to give skydiving a try. Mike, you crack me up. I have no problem with skydiving. Anyway, when it's time to jump out of the plane, I'll be a lot more inclined to go through with it if the instructor has removed the fear of the unknown by telling me exactly what to expect. This is an important one. I think sometimes if I try to explain something to someone, I've been accused of going into too much detail from time to time, which I would argue is not necessarily a bad thing. But I want people to know what exactly is about to happen. That way they know, okay, here's my expectations and here's how we're going to approach it. Here's what the course or plan of action is. Here's what we're trying to do. And this is after I've explained the why. They need to know the what. So I think that getting the questions answered, in case you haven't figured that out, the who, what, where, when, why, and how, are all critical. But Mike focused reason number 1 on the why and reason number 2 on the what. Got it. And I still think you're going down the right path. So let's move on to reason number 3, because there's only 4. Number 3 is a lack of job security. The third most common reason employees resist change is lack of job security. I've got to pay the bills. I have mouths to feed. Will I still have a job after this change? If a change is introduced, I'm worried that it could affect my job or my ability to do my job. I'm definitely going to be resistant to that change, right? And I think that people enter that fear of the unknown and they're just like, okay, if these changes happen, are they going to do layoffs? Is it going to affect me? How are these changes going to impact me directly? There's just a lot of stir, a lot of mixing going on there. So I think it's important for us to really understand that people may be fearful of losing their jobs, or people might be fearful of things being different in a sense that it would negatively impact the way that they approach work. So a lack of job security or a lack of being able to do your job is also a very relevant reason to be afraid. And then fourth, and this one's probably the most interesting, is a lack of executive advocacy. I never even thought of that. The fourth most common reason employees resist change is the lack of executive sponsorship for the change. If no one on a leadership team supports the change, it's going to make it so much harder for you. We're much more likely to support a change if there's at least one key leader advocating for the change. And that throws a new monkey wrench into the equation, because then leaders resist change too. Managers, though, resist change for different reasons. When managers or leaders resist change, it's usually because they fear losing control or losing some of their authority. They have lack of time as one of their issues, or comfort with status quo, or comfortable with the way things are. We don't want to change, or no answer to the "what's in it for me" question, or they're not involved in designing the change. And I think that if you think about this from a holistic perspective, everyone's resistant to change for different reasons. But I think that if we really understand change, change can be a catalyst for good. And I don't think we need to be as fearful as we make ourselves out to be. The moral of the story is, even though change can be hard, it doesn't have to be. And I think that too many organizations and too many people focus on the negativity surrounding change instead of the power that change can bring. So I hope that you'll give skydiving a try, Mike. Change isn't always a bad thing. That's going to do it for today. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you have a topic you want us to discuss, learn more at agiledad.com. We'd love to hear from you. As always, we encourage you to stay healthy, stay well, and stay agile, my friends. Until next time, do take care.